Was a time of the preach when a story begun. The choice of a woman and the love of a man, and how he loved her so dearly. He went out of his mind. Well, she left him for someone she left behind. They're frozen up.
Oh, hello, everybody.
Hey, everybody. You've been spying on us here as we've been getting ready for tonight. Hey, there they are. All right. So, hey, Garrett, take the camera to you while I fix something over here, and you tell everybody good afternoon.
Good evening. Yeah, so hopefully everybody's doing well. We are attempting to do something we haven't done yet, which is video chat with Kevin and Denise Simonsen, all the way out in Oregon. And where are you out in Oregon?
They're not quite ready, so give them just a second.
Not quite
All
ready.
we can see right now is Kevin's big paw.
Yeah,
And
he's
it's
situating
over
himself.
the screen. So,
Yes, now.
hey, can you hear him now?
I guess we'll find out.
You
Let
might
me
have
plug
to
this
take
back
the
in my ear.
picture, so you might have to push that.
Say hello if you're out there watching. We'll give a wave. Kevin and Denise, do you want to say hi and make sure
You
this
can
is
say
working?
hi. Y'all are now live, Kevin and
Hello.
Denise.
Hello. We're trying to get to where we can the view on our end changed, and I'm
Yeah, we saw the floor, and you're oh.
And now
Oh,
they're
okay. Don't stop touching it.
Okay.
Y'all look great. Good to
All
see
right.
y'all.
good to see y'all.
I was just giving you a little update of folks that are on here saying hello tonight. Catherine Scott, Jay McCauley, Eddie Henderson, Cindy McBrayer, Peggy Fogarty, Victoria Hunt, Sabrina Wright Young, Peggy Jones, Linda Leonard Trudeau. Did I say Victoria? She popped up again. Russ Clark, Dave Levesque, Pauline Sutcliffe, Bridget Bergwall, Carolyn Mullins, Nancy Gross, Tim Riles, Jane McCauley, Kathy Joyner, Bobby Raines, Ken Vines, Terry Olive, Aaron McHugh, Gary
Aaron's
Hedges, Carla. I mean, we got a crowd tonight. All to see.
That's good.
All to see the Simonsons. So,
Well, hi y'all. We certainly miss y'all.
well, we're glad you're here tonight. This was so much fun. We've had a few interviews the last couple weeks, and we've enjoyed the interview format because after a while of just listening to Garrett and I talk about nerdy theology stuff, it gets pretty boring. I think possibly, but
I thought that's what we're doing tonight.
well, we will talk about some nerdy theology stuff, but we'll do it in a bigger circle here.
Yes.
with some assistance.
I love it.
Special thanks last week to the Balfours who hosted us wonderfully at their home for Q&A, and then the week before that it was Dan Alvers, and next Wednesday night, drum roll please, it will be Sarah Ann Davidson,
Yeah.
and she'll be talking about her own journey and some things that she's got going on. But tonight it's the Simonsons, and so y'all tell us where you are tonight in this big mansion. I think that y'all are sharing a room with.
Oh, you got that right. We did a sound check a little earlier, and the big mansion that Ronnie's talking about is really it's really a storage unit with a bed in it.
I love it. I love it.
So, but we're in Sisters, Oregon, and that's Central Oregon, and it's a little town. Well, at the 2010 census, it was about 2,000 people. It's about 20 minutes northwest of Bend, Oregon, which is the biggest city in the Central Oregon. But the reason I mentioned the 2010 census is, of course, we don't have the 2020 yet, but it just looks like to us that a lot of other people have found this place since the 2010 census, and we're two of them now. So.
Oh well, it's time for the new count anyway. So I'm sure there'll be a dramatic adjustment. There's a company, and I can't remember who's there, but somebody is. It's an outdoor company. You may have found them, but they're in Sisters, and I just can't remember who it is.
We
Oh.
found, and maybe this is what you're thinking of. I'm not sure. Laird Hamilton. That is I believe he's a surfer.
Yes.
It's his superfoods company.
That's it.
Where
That's it. He is that beautiful California looking guy that has won a million surf championships. That's probably where I've heard it. Because I'm such a surfer.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that
Us too.
So tell us, tell us what has you out west. I mean, you left. The coronavirus struck, and you left.
Well,
but actually, you already were
planned.
planning a trip, so that's not fair. But
we live in 600 square feet right on the Gulf and Rental Row. So in July, August, September, without a pandemic, it's craziness. And one of the reasons that we kind of became the minimalists, as you know, and sort of sold everything and lived in 600 square feet was with the idea that we would travel and still be able to support, and be an active part of Kate's life in nursing care, but also have a chance to travel and spend more time with our boys. And so we had planned, our oldest is in Central Oregon. Well, in Portland, really in Portland, but we had planned to spend time in both Portland and Central in the summer. So once we felt like we could safely come out here and be with him, we did. And with COVID rates rising in Florida and being, as I said, in such a very dense area,
right,
in the Panhandle and things like that, we just felt safer out here.
Sure, and Dylan's your oldest, so you're now sharing a state with him for the first time in a long time. Is that right?
In a long time, and
yes.
Matt is in Denver, so
okay.
we are much closer to him too.
And Dylan is doing what now? Is he teaching school or preparing to teach?
He just got a job and starts Monday, and he is going to be a full-time case manager for the juvenile unit of the public defender's office.
Oh.
So Dylan basically graduated with degrees in education and Spanish, taught some in St. Louis. He went to Wash U, and then worked in DC in sales and really spent a number of years in corporate America, and felt like while it fed his competitive spirit to be in sales, that it wasn't really feeling his heart, and he really has a servant's heart. And his brother Matt is in civil rights law, and I think Dylan was just trying to it's very difficult, as you know, during the pandemic to find employment, but he basically quit his job he had saved enough money to quit his job in DC and travel to over 40 countries in 6 months and teach English in Costa Rica, in Peru, and felt like he really wanted to be a global change agent and just do more. And so he had applied for some teaching positions. In fact, he got 2 jobs, but because of the COVID situation, neither really came to fruition.
Mm-hmm.
And so was starting to kind of look outside the teaching realm. And so he's hoping to make a meaningful contribution through this role.
Oh, that's fantastic. I last saw him, I think, Christmas.
Yes.
He was here before leaving to go out west, and still a lot of unknowns. And I know in talking to him about his world travels, how much he enjoyed that. And
definitely,
I figured that had ruined him in the sense of ever trying to do, to go back to coat and tie purely corporate life. I didn't think that he would be able to go back and do that after that kind of exposure. And your other son, who is now a law graduate and has a job with the Justice Department.
He is clerking, and he is kind of transitioning from one clerking role to the other really next month.
From the Court of Appeals in Denver to one of the newest Supreme Court justices in Colorado.
Y'all have got to be so proud. I mean, of both your boys. That is just incredible.
Well, it is, but I think, as Denise kind of alluded to, I think what probably makes me the proudest is just how their heart for wanting to change the world for the better. And especially Dylan with his job of going for, let's say, leaving the job that was safer with more money and all that sort of thing to further himself by traveling, and then taking a job that doesn't nearly pay as well, but he's so happy with what he's going to be doing and the ability to to help others. I think that's what makes Dad the proudest. Let's put it that way.
Well, and I
that's
said to
fantastic.
Kevin right before the interview that, one of the things I would say that in a lot of ways you probably look at your kids, and in some ways I would say this about students when I was teaching too, but they can be your best teachers. And both of our boys with the current environment in this country have said, Mom and Dad, it's not enough for you just to think you have compassion, and think that you're not part of the problem. Not inaction is really part of the problem, and we want to have more conversations as a family. We want you to read. I had actually read a lot of it, but the new Jim Crow laws. We want you to read Just Mercy. We want to talk about this.
Oh, yeah.
See the film, and they talk a lot. And Dylan in particular has a good friend that works as a public defender, and Matt, of course. So I think for me, as I was saying to Kevin, I think, it wasn't just that they came home in third grade and said, Mom and Dad, we have to recycle. I can't believe that we don't recycle. But, on a much bigger scale, saying, hey, wait a minute. We need to be part of the positive change. And so to see your kids telling you that, I think is really is magnificent, and far more important than what titles they would have after their names and the degree or how much money they make or anything else.
Well, they're going to live adventurous lives. They're already doing that, and
For sure.
that's exciting. And of course, you have this big adventure. You're out west. You're going to be spending more time there. That's not letting any cat out of the bag anymore.
Nope.
Obviously, because your children are there, and that's
Well, and
something I understand. And that would, our kids are, mine and Cindy's kids are a little younger than yours, and of course Garrett's just a little older than your sons, I think. So his kids are much younger, but so he's at the stage of life where he's trying to get away from his children, especially during the coronavirus. Nobody
man.
has been at school, but having essentially, I have two now in the western region. Not that I'm planning to go west, but it's certainly you've done a great thing to be able to be traveling distance between the two of them now.
Right.
So,
absolutely. And Kate, is in nursing care, and honestly, the nursing home is sealed up about as tight as it can be.
right.
So, in the beginning, I would say this was definitely a love. Anybody that knows me and knows that I gave up playing tennis with people to minimize my exposure, and did everything absolutely that I could do to not get COVID, because I was in the beginning still taking Kate to critical appointments. But
Right, and Kate, by the way, for those of you who may be listening, Kate is Kevin's mom, and
Right.
Kevin's dad passed away in the last couple of years. It's been 2 years now, hasn't it?
2 or 3?
two.
Two.
Yeah,
Okay, it's 2.
Yeah.
It looks like a lot longer.
Yeah.
And Kevin's parents had lived with Kevin and Denise for many, many years, so they have been caregivers for a long time. And of course, I think we've had this discussion too. I think their involvement in your sons' lives are a large part of why they. It's not just the 4 of you, the 6 of you lived together for 20 years.
Almost 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
That was a huge thing, and well, I kind of take it in a little bit of a different direction at the moment, but it was definitely a God-led thing for all of us to get to Durango, Colorado, where we started, which was about 20 some years ago. My relationship with my parents, while it was a good one, wasn't really all that close. And it seemed somewhat fortuitous at the time that we built what was a second home at the time, what we thought was going to be a second home. And My folks had just retired. They came out to Durango and said, wow, this would be nice to be able to spend quite a bit of time here. And we said, well, the house isn't going to be lived in that much, but you're welcome to. And I started transitioning out of a job, and the next thing, to make it the story short, the next thing you know, Denise and I were living there full time with kids that were 1 and 3, and it was the start of um, a whole new family unit that just kind of happened. And
Right.
I look back on it now, and the way the stars aligned, if you would, was truly God leading all the way, but we didn't know it at the time.
Oh, I love that. I love that. We do have a comment here from Nancy Gross, y'all's good friend, who basically says she could help with Kate anyway. How could she help?
Oh,
So Nancy has put that out. Nancy, thank you for that
thank you. That's very
compassion
sweet.
on there. Now, how long have y'all been a part of a Simple Faith? Remind me.
That's a very, very good question.
I,
I don't
would,
have the answer either. So
I'm going to guess about between 3 and 4 years.
I think it's longer than that.
It may be. It seems like whenever you guess, it's usually
Seems
always
like an
long.
eternity. I know, Kevin. I'm sorry, man. You know what can I
Yeah, I
say?
know.
But uh, and you have with Terry Olive, and Terry's watching tonight. Terry, I hope you're still plugged in here. You and Terry have helped with the Prayer Boys, and which is a very common fun name for a group of men. Not many boys in that group now.
No.
The median age is about 114, and I'm kidding, guys. I'm kidding. But
And I bring that down a tad.
yeah, that's right. That's right. You're the main youth factor in there. So you and Terry Olive have facilitated that group for years, and had taken over really the kind of the lead role in the facilitation process. And now, because of your transitions and being out west more, that's sort of looking for different leadership, different facilitation there. Terry and I have talked. You and I have talked about that, but this would be a good time too to say, if you're a part of that group, Garrett's working more on the communications piece of getting prayer requests out there, but it still requires someone to convene. And this group has been convening by, is it Zoom or call in during the coronavirus?
We've just been calling in by a free call-in conference, a free audio conference
Right.
service, which is really pretty easy. It's call in a number, type in a number, and the host types in a different number, and everybody's on.
Right.
And it's worked pretty well. We considered doing Zoom, but we felt like, and getting back to your median age of 114, that we didn't want to.
Obviously that's not true, because one of the challenges of having leadership there is that group is rambling somewhere all the time.
Yeah, that's true.
Billy's been a part of that group. He's in South Florida. Kurt Tape's on a motorcycle somewhere all the time. Snowbirds roll in and out like rolling dice, So it's a moving target, and probably one of the more unique groups you'll ever meet.
For sure. And I guess one thing I would say about it is, before coronavirus, when we were meeting at the church, when we weren't doing anything over a conference call, and so when snowbirds or people would go back to their other homes, they were essentially out of the loop until they came back to Santa Rosa Beach again. And since we went to the conference call format, a number of people that have gone back to other places that they live now can participate on a regular basis. Rich Hines out in Kansas City, Dan Palladino all the way up in Maine, and so it's been a little bit different, but we've just kind of rolled with the changes, if you will.
Right, and that does speak to. They may be 114 average age, but they have certainly young hearts, and they're adventurous too in their own way. And this is just a good place to make an appeal to that group, to facilitate that. And we'll be getting some formal communications and appeals out in that regard. But I wanted to make sure that we talked about that tonight. Now, Kevin, you're not from the West. You're from you're a native born Floridian, and is that true?
No, no, not exactly. I'm pretty much a native Floridian, and my parents moved from Michigan when I was a year and a half.
Okay.
So raised in South Florida, in Punta Gorda, which is down between Venice and well, between Fort Myers and Sarasota.
It's
Let's say
changed a
that.
little bit since you were there.
And ironically, a few years back, I went back there, and I would not even have any way to identify the town I grew up in. It was just unbelievably different.
What was your religious background growing up there?
Okay. Uh, that's one thing that I thank my mom and dad for all the time, in that uh, I was raised Methodist, and we attended a small Methodist church in, actually, it was called Cleveland, Florida. If Punta Gorda wasn't small enough, which was only a few thousand people, I think Cleveland, Florida had about three or 400. But they had a Methodist church there. And that's where I went to Sunday school, and was in the church plays and that sort of thing. And I'll just give you a kind of a brief history. I've been Methodist all my life until I went to until we found Simple Faith, and uh, it's been a thing where I guess this would sound like a story of a lot of people's faith journey, where when I went to college, kind of fell out and became Easter and Christmas when I went home and that sort of thing. And it was really only when we moved to Durango when we all got involved in the church. And here's another little plug for, I'm not meaning to do commercials tonight, but for small groups. But when I got into a small group and became really good friends with associate pastor there, that was also the music ministry leader, and make connections more than just the Sunday worship, it was like, wow, there's more to the church going experience than just the hour or so of worship on Sunday.
And
And
that associate minister still remains a very good friend.
very good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's pastor of a Methodist church in Grand Junction, Colorado now. He's
Oh,
been
that's another.
several different places around Colorado, and most currently in Grand Junction.
And Denise, you're both where you were raised and your background completely different. So tell us
Completely different.
where are you from?
In Northern California, in the Bay Area, and was there until I went to school. I went to UCLA and UC Irvine in Southern California, and clearly lived in enough cities that when you and Cindy were out there, you thought I was on the lam, because I could tell you that I've lived in so many different cities. Met Kevin in Southern California, and we lived there till we moved to Durango.
And you, of course, I know this, but you were
yeah,
not raised Methodist.
I was raised Jewish,
Mm-hmm.
and as we'll probably get to or talk about, much more of a cultural Jewish background than really a spiritual Jewish background. But we drove about 45 minutes to go to a service at a temple, because there really wasn't a temple that my parents had belonged to or felt met their needs that was closer. And my dad worked in that same city, so it made sense. I went to what would be called, kind of Jewish Sunday school from kindergarten through fifth grade. And that was it. I was not bat mitzvahed, but I have a brother who was adopted who was.
Mm-hmm.
And a little bit of background is my dad grew up in the Bronx in New York, and his association with Judaism, which is interesting because I've talked to others who are my generation who've also had a father that was raised in the Bronx, but certainly after our wonderful trip to Israel, but understanding that even if my parents would have identified certainly not as Orthodox, but as more conservative, my dad held a lot of sort of the gender, norms of what you would see in terms of the temple we went to. There was definitely integration between women and men in services. You sat together. But to my dad, it was not important that any of his daughters be bat mitzvahed, but it was very important that his son have a bar mitzvah.
Right.
And I joked with Kevin because I said, if you look at the history of our family and like your beautiful wife, I have some Polish ancestry. I also have Romanian ancestry. But when you look at the businesses, whether there was a tailor business, there was a plumbing company, it was always, Cooper Brothers or so-and-so and Sons. It's very much that a son would be involved in the family business. And I think, as you see in many other cultures, but it was particularly true. So I was joking with Kevin and saying, God's smiling down on you or laughing. All my dad wanted was a son, and they had 3 girls in a year and 3 days. And years later, adopted my brother.
You have a twin
anyway,
sister. You have a twin sister, right? So we need to clarify
I
that.
was like, the math on that one's tricky.
Greatest magic trick ever.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
So anyway, that's it. But I will also say I experienced a lot of anti-Semitism as a child.
That was a question I had for you tonight. So
yeah.
go ahead and. Was it in the community at school, or because you didn't go to parochial school, so you didn't go to like temple school, you went to public school, right?
No, I went to public school, and honestly, what I can remember about grade school, which stood out, is at Christmas time you always do arts and crafts, and that I was handed, along with probably a couple other kids. I mean, it was a small group, white and blue paper, while everybody else was given red and green paper. So that was the cultural, sensitivity supposedly at that point. But more than that, it was what I would think more out of ignorance or just a lack of maybe acceptance or awareness. When I was 10 years old, we moved from one town in the Bay Area to another. And my brother, so I was 10, my brother was 5. And one of the neighbors would not let their son, who was my brother's age, play with him because we were Jewish, and they said that Jews had horns. And so, this is in the mid 70s, and you certainly wouldn't think that in 1970 that would be, what was the common thinking at that point. But, those were the attitudes.
It was also California. It wasn't like it was. A small town in the heartland that had no experience with a Jewish family or a temple or a synagogue.
Well, and I personally had, dark olive skin. My dad did. And so oftentimes I would get asked, are you Italian? Are you whatever? I never wore a Star of David. I never told anybody. So I pretty much was able to not be really associated or identified, and I just kept that identity private. And so I personally didn't experience as much. And so when I went to college, it was not something I was embracing. And ironically, I joined a sorority, and there were a lot of Jewish women in the sorority, and my closest college friend was Jewish. So
find your place, found your people at that point.
Really, I think that many of them had the same issues I did with organized religion at that point, because they had experienced some of the same things. So, really it was, I said to Kevin, I didn't probably embrace being a Jew or identify with it or appreciate how much it has shaped my personality or affected my moral compass or anything. Really, I would say as much as I have since we went to Israel with you, but even more so, I think I have had the opportunity to focus much more on my faith in the last year or so than I really have in the past. I was far more concerned about raising children in a blended family and about how that was going to work and everybody's needs, and kind of taking the lead on that. And I
I
think
want to come back to that because you're reading from my script, and I
I
should go I should go ahead and disclose this that uh, should I pass from this earthly coil before Denise Simonsen does, that I've already asked that she eulogize me because she delivers one of the most fantastic eulogies. I've heard a couple, and
thank you.
so yeah, so and Kevin can play a Bob Dylan song for me.
There you go.
I mean, you are 114, Kevin, so I hope that I can outlast you, but you never know these days. Uh, Denise, let me just again for a clarification for the 3 4 dozen that are listening and watching. She talks about a bar mitzvah. That's a Jewish ceremony, coming of age, religious ceremony for a young Jewish boy, 12, 13. Rite of passage, bat mitzvah for the female, the teenage girl. And Denise, you're exactly right. In the more orthodox communities, bat mitzvahs are not always, they're exceptions, I think, rather than the norm. Conservative Judaism is a more middle of the road, and then Reform Judaism is more progressive, uh, and you see more even-handedness there, more female rabbis actually there, and it's a similar struggle that's fought in Protestantism and Catholicism even more so, which is completely male-driven. So I think while some folks aren't, very few of our listeners tonight are Jewish, they certainly would understand that in the Christian context of it being much more male driven at the hierarchy levels, and not the same importance is given, and that's just how it is. It's we can say we wish it were different, and it will be different at some point, and in some synagogues it is radically different. And I know I'm generalizing, so I hope folks just understand that that's what we're doing. Because I know the first thing somebody will say was, well, but in my church or in my synagogue,
Right.
we understand that, but typically those are exceptions rather than the rule,
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
so to speak.
Right.
And so to your sons, these marvelous young men that you've raised, that to me on the outside looking in, the combination of great involved parenting, steady grandparenting in their lives,
Mhm.
the Methodist passion for justice in the world, and then, as I talked about Sunday, the Jewish chutzpah, engagement, struggle. I see that in your boys, all of that in your boys, and I wonder how, if the two of you could talk about raising these two young men with this I'm Jewish, I'm Christian, I'm Jewish, I'm Christian. What did that look like? Because you've obviously done a very good job. And
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'll stick with that. Well, I will say this is that I think I came into it with more of an agenda than Kevin did, and that was I felt like I had been raised as a cultural Jew, but not a spiritual Jew. And I really wanted our boys to feel that there was greater meaning for their life. And when the times got tough, that they could use prayer or whatever else to help them through that. And I really also wanted what I always say, kind of, my favorite tenets of Judaism. I wanted them to feel that they were called to serve others and to be, we would call it being cheerful givers. And when they were little, when we talked about allowance, they had a bank, and it was saving, spending, and charity. And it first started out as tithing, but one of the things that we really talked about is in Judaism, actions are even far more important than beliefs, and that I wanted to make sure that it wasn't them walking down the aisle during communion or whatever and putting money in the basket and having everybody see that. I wanted them to take a very active role and decide that they heard at school that there was a family that had lost their home in a fire or something, and they were going to actively give this money to do that. And I also really wanted them to feel called to be good stewards of their environment and leave the world a better place. But I think for me, the blending was such an advantage for me in that our boys would bound up the stairs, and Kate would always say, "This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it." And they would never start a meal without saying grace. And I
Which is a
might have
Hebrew
said
scripture, by the way,
prayer.
right? That's a Hebrew
What do you
psalm.
say?
I said that's a
Yes,
Hebrew psalm.
yes,
Yeah, absolutely.
yes.
Yeah.
And, I might have said, especially on Friday night at a Shabbat dinner, I might have said a Jewish prayer, but it wasn't the same meaningful. Take a minute out of your day and just thank God and be so grateful for what you have and do that. And ironically, now if we sit down for a meal, it's usually me saying, do you want to say grace or the thing? But I will say, although I took maybe the lead for a while, our kids went to a Jewish preschool and a Methodist, Sunday school. I felt at that point sometimes that it was almost overkill or too much, and I was really okay with supplementing their Sunday school at the Methodist church. But I think for me, I always felt like we were doing this in tandem, and even though I might be taking the lead on some of it, Kate and my father-in-law Don and Kevin always were supporting anything I was doing 110%, and were so curious and willing to learn anything about what I was doing. And I will just close with a cute little story about my sweet mother-in-law Kate, and that is as part of one of the important Jewish holidays, Passover. You have a Seder plate that has very symbolic items on it, and one of those is called Herosis, and it has we always did Granny Smith apples and cinnamon and nuts, etc. Well, even once they met me, even when we were dating and I would see them, or before they moved in with us and we would visit, she would always have Herosis in a refrigerator for us. They wanted me to know from day one that they loved and accepted everything, that, they just wanted to be a part of this.
And she made it pretty good too.
Okay, Kevin, and what was your experience together with Denise on how you felt about? Obviously, you love this woman. You've lived your life with her and raised sons with her, but you had to know as well. Getting married, you were coming from different religious backgrounds, which I have to say is more common today than it's ever been. And that's one of the things that I think that some folks find threatening in the 21st century in the West, is that there's so much more diversity of religion, of race, of culture, and frankly, there's just so many more people that they check the box no religion at all.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't really work on that until children come along, and then they have to decide, are we going to raise our children religious, or in what religion? So Kevin, to you, early on, maybe you didn't think about how are we going to raise children, but certainly you came to the point that you did, and I'm just curious about what your own involvement was with that.
Well, let me even back up before that to start out with, before we got married, that it was probably one of my, what's the right word I'm looking for? Let me just say it this way. I met with the pastor of our Methodist church in Fullerton, California, to discuss the fact that Denise and I were considering getting married, or more considering that we were engaged to be married, but kind of, I guess I didn't know enough about it to know how it would be perceived by the church. It's just something that's even possible, so I guess what I'm trying to say with that is that we had some exploring to do just to be able to, probably me more than Denise, but just get to the point where we were both okay with it, if you will, and it wasn't going to be a stumbling block to our marriage. And this pastor turned out to be the pastor that married us, and that married us in Southern California, was a good friend, and to be honest, I mentioned a ways back, how I kind of drifted away from the church in college. So I'm now in the working world, and you talk about we all talk about little things that can mean a lot, that make us feel welcome or can draw us into church. I remember Pastor Dennis was his name, and he asked me during the Holy Week season, the season before Easter, if I would read the passage of Peter denying Jesus 3 times before the cock crowed. And I still remember that vividly, being almost frightened to go up and read that scripture. But it was like, it was a transforming experience just to read a short scripture, because it was like, what, you want me to read it? Haven't read the Bible before. I don't. I mean, I'd read. It wasn't like I hadn't read it at all, but I was definitely no scholar. Let's put it that way. Not that I am now, but it was a gesture to pull me in, pull me closer, and it was just something that God was there, and it endeared me more to the church. And Pastor Dennis really helped Denise and I just talk through maybe what our let's say reservations or issues were, so that we didn't have a significant issue after we got married. And now, so with that background, on to your question, Ronnie. What I was most concerned about was that and the approach that we took, and I think Denise explained it pretty well, is that I wouldn't call it give equal time, but we would give, um, uh, we would both try to expose the kids to both aspects of our religious backgrounds, so that they had more of um, uh, a rich background, a rich history, if you will, about where mom's coming from and where dad's coming from. And I really think that by doing that, and being there at Vacation Bible School, being there in their Sunday school classes. I wasn't a teacher, but would support the classes, be there, occasionally fill in, that sort of thing. So I think that to be able to uh, make it clear to the kids that both faiths are important. I think that's the main thing I wanted to get across.
I love
And
that
Matt
answer.
actually went to Catholic school from third to sixth grade.
Holy
So he
smokes.
would actually walk around and say, I'm Catholic, Methodist, and Jewish. And it, much to all the chagrin of the children
I
who
love
went
that.
who were Catholic, he would win all the theology contests.
Of course he would. Little nerd. The little nerd.
Speaking of theology,
But
I'm,
here's
I'm,
the prize for that. At the school dance, he got to dance with the nun. That was
oh,
the
hey, there
sister.
you go.
Oh, man.
That'll teach him next
It
time.
becomes a scandal.
there you go, sister.
So, going over, Garrett has a question for you.
Yeah, I'm just, I'm curious. How long have you guys been married now?
We've been married 28 years, but have known each other for 30.
Wow, fantastic.
Thanks.
So my question is just simply, how has both of your religious backgrounds helped influence one another? How has it helped you grow together in your own individual faith, but also together as you process this whole spirituality thing and who God is? How has Judaism and Methodist Christian background influenced both of you and helped you in different ways?
That's a good question.
It's a great question. I would just say, so I met Kevin 3 weeks after my mom died. And I will say we had hospice involved, and my mom died of ovarian cancer, as did her mother. And it was a long process. She was sick. I was taking her to chemo when I was in high school. But I can tell you that when my mom, she ended up dying from leukemia from all the chemo she had.
Oh.
But she was terrified of death. And I think my mom probably would have, and I know she really would have identified probably as atheist. So I think for a lot of people who maybe aren't as familiar with Judaism, Judaism is, when you say you're Jewish, I mean, that's part of your history. It's part of the cultural holidays. And, we never talked about God in my family other than saying the prayers. So I think that was, for me personally, I was against organized religion completely in college because of the anti-Semitism and the things that I thought it did. And so for me, meeting Kevin, and particularly, his pastor married us, and he did a beautiful ceremony. We did not get married in the church. We got married it was an old Orange County courthouse. And it was very important to me that for my family as well as my background, that we honor them and respect them. And so we were able to integrate some elements. But when I met Kevin's parents, very, very early on, it was clear to me that their faith was very important to them. They were very devout Methodists, and they never questioned anything about God. They had a prayerful existence. It was always very important for them to be part of Methodist Church. They actually found and were members of the Methodist Church before we actually moved to Durango, because they got there first. And so I think for me personally, not growing up with that and not having that was profound. And so I think what I will say, as many mothers do, is I kind of put everybody else's needs in front of mine, and I maybe didn't explore it. I knew there were situations when I was less comfortable or maybe felt like an outsider, but I was the one out of the family. Usually it was the first one to help with VBS. I was the one. And I think one thing we've struggled with is we haven't gone on a mission trip together. Kevin went to Romania, and part of it was I didn't want to feel like I was a fraud, like I was saying things or doing things that I couldn't really stand behind. I think Kevin will tell you, I mean, I'm like an open book. I'm as authentic, I can't be authentic, then I'm not there. But I was okay with doing things that I felt like were the best for the family. And I had gone to a Jewish camp when I was in middle school, maybe even in high school. And I remember asking the song leader at that time, well, what if you don't believe all the lyrics? Like, what if you don't believe every single thing that you're singing in the song? And it was a very profound moment for me, because he basically said, well, just think of it in a larger context. How does it make you feel, and who are you with, and other things. And so I think I carried that over when we would go to church and sing songs and do things. So for me personally, we found a simple faith, because I said to Kevin, your parents want to go to the Methodist Church. I will drive them to the Methodist Church. I love them, but I need to find something. We're not raising kids anymore. I need to find something where I really, really feel like I can explore my faith and be part of it too. And we don't, there isn't a temple here, and I'm not saying that that's even what I want. I'm just wanting something different. So you asked us, we went and visited. We went to 2 church services that day, and we went when you were on 393. Okay. And that day, we both looked at each other, and I said, that's where I want to go.
Victoria Hunt had made the suggestion, well, just ask them which building they showed up in the first time, and we'll figure it out. So, Victoria, you're exactly right.
And the last thing that I'll leave you with is, Ronnie, you and this friend of ours are the two that always text me on Jewish holidays or send me Hebrew messages. And that has always meant so much. And even in Durango, they had me join as a friend of the church. I mean, I've always felt like people really included and embraced and respected my background. But I think going to Israel and meeting Ezra and understanding so much more about the Israeli conflicts and just what it was like, and walking through Jerusalem, that made me identify with my Judaism in a unique way. And as far as being prayerful, I say to Kevin, and even if he stresses out, I start every day and end every day. And many times if I'm walking, I'm always thinking about 5 things I'm grateful for and 5 things that I would pray for. And so I would say prayer's never really been part of my life until probably really for the last year, probably more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
But it feels like it's right for me and authentic, and I don't know. So I mean, that's kind of a long-winded answer, but that's just where I'm at. I feel like
Great answer.
I'm able to do, what works for me.
And I think Garrett has a follow up. So Garrett.
Okay.
Yeah, and the follow up was really you kind of answered it just a little bit, with the different backgrounds that you come from, and I chuckled when Kevin first mentioned this earlier. He said, we landed at a simple faith and we've been there ever since, and I kind of chuckled just thinking in my mind, oh, we messed you up, but really the question stems from that, which is how has a simple faith catered to both backgrounds? How has it helped you grow, in your different faith walks?
Can I start?
Yeah, go.
Well, the first one to me is I've been in the music, of course, is really important to me, and it's a real important ministry, and I really, people connect to worship different ways, and music is one way that I really connect. And I played in the praise band in Durango for nearly all 15 years we were there. But the music leader, for the most part, and this isn't my friend, he was only there for a year or two, was just took the praise songs and wanted us to perform them like they were on the CD. And there was a hard stop. There needed to be a hard stop, and it was. I still enjoyed playing the music. I enjoyed being part of it, but God forbid there would be a secular song in the worship service. And
sorry.
When I came here, what was that?
I said sorry.
No, that opened up a whole new thing to me as far as how praise and worship songs are great. There's a lot of them that are my favorite songs, but there are secular songs that we do that I can worship just as much or more through in church as I can a hymn or a praise and worship song, and that just opened things up so much to me that I just can't tell you how that broadened my experience in the church.
Well, if I can follow up with a comment online here, Kevin, from Tim Riles.
Just read it.
Okay.
I just read it.
Tim says, "We love you guys, and Kevin, I really miss playing music with you. If you ever decide to get rid of that massive, super cool cowboy hat that you have, since you have less room now, I would be a player to take it. Name your price." So there you go. So,
all right, Tim, I will consider that. Although we're moving back to a place where they have a rodeo here and everything.
Oh, and you might have to fight Ricky for it. Ricky
needs to get a belt buckle now.
Ricky has said to me for years, since you wore that hat at a show one time, he would say in the Ricky Stanfield way,
Ricky
I hate him. And I'm like, why do you hate Kevin? That hat. I should have that hat. So every time I'll say, I talked to Kevin today. Oh, I hate him. Why? Is it still the hat? Yeah, I should have that hat. So, that hat's legendary, man. It's legendary.
Well, and I will
I
say
didn't know
one of the reasons for me, in terms of picking where we wanted to be, was I really wanted to be somewhere where Kevin could be in a worship band or as part of the band. That was really important to me. You know that Kevin is quiet, but when you get to know him, he's really not.
Right.
But it's really where he's able to serve, and I think where he feels like that's really his place. Obviously, he doesn't always want to be the leader.
I never want to be the leader.
I mean, you're in Sisters, Oregon, because you just couldn't. How do you tell these 114-year-old guys you can't facilitate them anymore, right?
Yeah.
Move away.
Well, I'll say this, and believe it or not, we've spent an hour. It's gone already.
Oh my gosh.
So it's just been wonderful. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. This is everything I knew it would be.
Thank you for having us.
And we wanted to stay connected with you and wish you all the best in all these transitions, but also know that you're not going that far away, because you still are keeping your place here and going to be here. In fact, I asked Cindy before I came up tonight, I said, "You got any questions for Kevin and Denise? And she said, yeah, where's the condo key? That was her question. So it's kind of funny. And we had a good laugh about that. But
You might say, "Where's the COVID key?"
the COVID key. Yeah. I might have to say that one. But I uh, I think I may have just lost them for a second there. Did we lose them?
Yeah.
Oh, no, they're back.
They're
Okay.
back.
Okay.
Oh, they're back. That was our son.
Sorry, our
Kevin
son.
got a call from
Notification. Tell them to chill out. I just want to say that your cooperation together, not just as husband and wife, but as people from different cultures and different faiths, raising marvelous children, caring for aging grandparents, being engaged in your communities, is an example of what is needed in our country today more than ever. And I applaud y'all for that. I applaud you for having a deep spirituality while at the same time, I know both of you have advanced degrees in business and science and engineering, and you're smart as a whip people. But that doesn't mean that doesn't they really are. I mean, look at them. Look how smart they are on that screen. But you also are people of deep spirituality, and I just can't. I'm just glad you're my friends. I'm glad that I can count you among those, and you're just an example to what would. There's that good Yiddish word, mensch. Although I'm not gonna. I'll let you use the word, but I can't claim the title. It's too much. It's too high.
Well, we're glad to
But,
be friends too, and we
Thank
appreciate
you
the
so
we
much for the
appreciate
kind
the
words.
yes.
Okay, I'm gonna let y'all go, and we're gonna wrap things
Thank
up here.
you.
Okay.
All right. Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
All
Bye.
right.
Appreciate
Bye,
it. You guys
y'all.
take
Thanks for
care.
having
Thank
us.
you.
You got it.
Bye-bye.
See you soon.
Bye bye.
Man, that was great.
Fantastic.
Wasn't that super?
Yes,
just
that was a lot of
great.
fun, man.
That was just we could have gone on for hours. Just great conversation, and thanks to everybody out there tonight who joined us and helped with your just commenting along and all the love that's on this all the comments there. I hope that they are able to see those later. Next week, Sarah Ann will be right here in the upper room, God willing, and she has been on a just marvelous spiritual journey of her own, and we'll get a little bit more of her story.
Yeah, that'll be fun. That'll be a lot of fun.
And it's gonna be great. I talked to her just today. She's feeling much better. Thinks she just has a cold. She's been tested. She's in the negative on COVID, so that's great. So once again, thanks everybody. Thanks to Garrett for running the tech again so well tonight with this new wrinkle of doing in a call in. So if Garrett and I look a little wild-eyed, we have literally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 screens to do this tonight here, but it worked out great. And all our thanks to the Simonsons, and we'll see you Sunday morning, 10 o'clock Central Time, right here. All right? We'll see you then.
Take care.
Was a time of the preacher when the story begun. Choice of a woman and the love of a man, and how he loved her so dearly. He went out of his mind. Well, she left him for someone she left behind.